Hey, I've found a business that's using Twitter effectively. It's a bar. In fact, the owner says it's a foundational part of his marketing. Crazy, huh? And the thing is, he's not doing anything special.
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Timbo Reid.
Welcome back, team, to another episode of Australia's #1 marketing show. I'm your host, Timbo Reid. You, so much more importantly, you're a motivated business owner. Yeah, ready to crank out some great marketing to build that business into the empire it deserves to be. Welcome newbies, welcome oldies. I love yous all. Hey, big show today. We are joined by a fellow, Steve Vallas, who founded and owns the Honey Bar, which is a cool little bar in an inner city suburb of Melbourne called South Melbourne. He's an ex-lawyer and he's turned small business owner, and as you heard up the top of the show, he's nailing Twitter. Love it. But don't expect any magical formula. He's just using it as it should be used. Hey, I also, after the interview, I am going to get up on my soapbox. Oh, yeah, and share 3 very, very average, it makes me sad, customer experiences I've had in the past week that has cost the 3 businesses combined approximately $40,010.90. Yep, up on the old soapbox. Haven't done that for a while. And I have got a motivational marketing quote all about the sound of deadlines. Now, this show is lovingly brought to you by the very good folk at Key Person of Influence, the world's leading business accelerator program for those of you, and only those, who want to become industry thought leaders, who want to get more business by being considered special. Yeah. Hey, they've got a free copy of their Amazon bestseller they want to give you, a free hard copy. Head over to keypersonofinfluence.com/Timbo. And if you love reading, I've got another free book for you. This time it's an audio book from audibletrial.com/SBBM. You can choose from 180,000 titles, and in between episodes of the Small Business Big Marketing Show, you can, read 50 Shades of Grey, or if you're a bloke, 50 Sheds of Grey. I don't know. Hey, as per usual, there is marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at the Small Business Big Marketing HQ. So let's get stuck right in.
Join the Small Business Big Marketing community and have your marketing questions answered by other motivated business owners, including Timbo, over at crankmymarketing.com.
Don't forget, I'll get up on my soapbox later on, but let's get stuck firstly into today's guest, who is Steve Vallas. He was a lawyer. He's also a taxi driver. He'll tell you about that shortly. And now he's a pub owner. And he founded and continues to run a very cool little bar in South Melbourne called the Honey Bar. Do a very, very good burger, let me tell you. And he's nailing Twitter. So let's get stuck in and find out how he's doing that. I started off by asking him, my favourite question, what's the biggest animal he could knock out with one punch? Speaking of burgers.
With one punch, mate, I will take on any animal because I'll follow the punch with probably a chair or something else, mate. I learnt a long time ago from a friend of mine. He said to me, as one of the best fighters I've ever met, he said, it doesn't matter how you win the fight as long as you win the fight. So I've taken that with me.
Righto, any animal. You've won the prize. I've asked that question a few times and people normally give it some consideration. Oh, maybe a sheep. Maybe a sheep with a really big, but you've just gone any animal. You're a bit of a street fighter when it comes to running a small business, are you, Steve?
I think you have to be nowadays. That's what I've learned. I was a much greener business version of myself a few years ago than I am today. I think the expectation that everything's going to be a bit of a straight line. In business long enough, you realise that's not actually the case.
What was the green Steve like? Give me some insight into him.
Mate, he was pleasant. he rarely got annoyed.
Yes, man.
He was the life of the party. I'd still like to be all those things, but I also like the colour that is night and day of having a few tools in the arsenal.
So just so I understand that better, because it's a really interesting lesson. Did you go from being Mr. Nice Guy to developing some mongrel in order to be successful in business?
Yeah, I did. And I think the formal sort of training, the education that I had, university taught me to do things in a particular way. And I think the training was very much, there are winners and losers, there's black and white. And I think the reality of business is, by and large, there's a lot of grey. You're dealing with so many different motivating factors for people who are generally in business, and there aren't necessarily winners or losers. Sometimes you just need to do what you need to do to get through. So it was a pretty sort of abrupt lesson for me when I started my one of my most recent businesses, the bar. It was actually a property development as well, and I went in there relatively naive, assuming things would go well, and in the end it was a very torturous process over a number of years with many court cases, and I realised that people were there to play spoiler much more readily than I thought they would be.
Yeah, right. So was there a moment, we're here to talk about the Honey Bar, obviously, but just before that, was there a moment, maybe it was during the development of the Honey Bar, but where you've gone, oh, hang on, Mr. Steve, the nice guy, has now got to change. He's got to get a lot harder. Was there actually something that happened?
So there was. I have a sort of vivid recollection of a moment where I was standing in the building. It was only 50% built, out of concrete structure, invested millions, and by that stage, probably 5 years in the process. And I stood there thinking, what have I done? Because to that point in time, all the substantive sort of things had encountered a lot of problems. So I stood there and I thought, yeah, naive Steve probably won't get through. I really needed to sort of dig the heels in, and from there make sure that every bridge I crossed was a winner.
Was did that jar with you, or actually you felt, was the naive Steve not really you, and the mongrel Steve just itching to get out, and this was his opportunity? No,
I think there's the balance. More recently, a few people I know, they laugh at a bit of a theory I've come up with, which is the 10% mongrel theory. And it's simply put, 90% of the time you can be that happy person, you can be that good person, but 10% of the time you're going to have instances where you really need to be willing to fight. And I think I spoke to a lawyer some years ago, and he was talking about the nature of the legal profession and, generally speaking, the nature of the fights that they have. And they said 90% of the lawyers work on the fights on the way out, 10% work on the contracts on the way in. So, and I've sort of flipped that on its head and recognised that sometimes you just can't be nice to everybody. I might be wrong. It's just the view that I've sort of formed over a period of time, but you can't always be that person because a variety of things often come into play.
I've got a mate who's a school teacher by trade, and he has just entered property development. And we've had this conversation a couple of weeks ago where he said to me only last week, he's now in awe of business people, just generally, because he just didn't realise just how much harder it was than he thought it was running a business.
And I think the thing about the property stuff in particular, Tim, is it really is a zero-sum game for a lot of people. If you're making money, someone else is losing money in property. And a lot of businesses don't have that dynamic, but property, I think, is one of them.
Yeah.
The less money you give to a builder, the more money you keep in your pocket. So that's something that I think people sort of don't realise when they get into that sort of field.
Steve, before Honey Bar came along, you're a lawyer, correct?
I was a lawyer. I'm happy to describe myself also as an ex-taxi driver. In fact, depending on who I speak to, I prefer to say ex-taxi driver over ex-lawyer.
You've done both, have you?
I've done both.
Love it. Well, gee, where do I go with that? Who do you choose to tell that you're a taxi driver, and who do you choose to tell that you're a lawyer?
I'm a bit contrarian. So I'll tell lawyers I'm a taxi driver, and I'll tell taxi drivers I'm a lawyer.
Yeah, right.
I always like to test the social dynamic, because I found when I was at uni and I was driving the cab, I had two very different conversations. The conversation which was, you're a taxi driver, and people would speak to me and at me in a particular way. And then when I'd mention I was studying law, it'd be a very different conversation. And I realised early on in the piece that people tend to take you as they find you. And I've said that to people a lot over an extended period of time. You need to be mindful that you tend to be pigeonholed by those who meet you. And I like to throw the contrarian option in wherever I can, just to see whether people are quick to try to put you into a particular category.
Well, it's always interesting if someone does ask, what do you do, to go back to them with, hey, listen, before I tell you what I do you mind if I ask what you do? At least you can frame your response in a way that's going to lead to an interesting conversation. So, mate, you're a lawyer, ex-taxi driver. A few years ago, you decide to enter the hospitality trade and open up a bar in South Melbourne. For overseas listeners, that's a groovy inner city suburb of Melbourne. What fascinates me, Steve, and I ask myself this every time when I see a new bar or cafe pop up, what did you think? What made you think the world needed another bar?
Tim, we all make mistakes.
Thank you very much.
Look, for me...
It wasn't a mistake, mate. I mean, it's clearly we'll talk about the success that is the Honey Bar, but why do you say it was a mistake?
No, I don't. I'm joking. I think the reality with most businesses is the world rarely needs one more of anything else. Hospitality is a funny one because most people who get into hospitality view it as a bit of a passion play. It's the kind of thing that people think they're going to do when they've done everything else. You know, the dream is open up a place to whatever. I'm a little bit different in that respect. I'm the passion versus effort guy, where I'll say I think the effort is worth it. I wasn't fixated with hospitality. I didn't think this was something that was my calling. I viewed it as a property development, and I viewed it as an income stream, which would then afford me opportunities to do other things. So
yeah, right. So this was a means to an end. You weren't going, oh, I would love nothing more than to just get behind the coffee machine and smash out 3,000, piccolos and lattes a day.
Mate, I am a terrible waiter. I'm a terrible bartender. I'm a good talker.
Right.
So I don't have the basic skill set, but I have the ability, I think, to communicate.
So you'd made some coin. You saw an opportunity from real estate, well-located real estate in South Melbourne, and thought, that's what I'm going to do.
Well, I did, and I sort of underestimated as well. The good thing, it's taught me the lesson that was I underestimated how much joy I would get out of the relationships that have been derived from the business. And I sort of thought I'd get the business up and running, then I'd monitor it, and it'd be a much drier process. But during the last 7 years that we've been open, it's been much more about the people and much less about just the mechanics of the business.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back. Well, at the time, you didn't really think the world needed another bar. You just saw a good business opportunity. In opening the Honey Bar, what was your point of difference in the sense, again, like there's no shortage of bars in that area? Was it going to be the design, the menu, the customer service, or the experience? What was it?
I guess this, again, sort of ties into the naivety, Tim. I thought it was a very well-rounded offer. I was very methodical in the way I planned for the business. Yeah. So I think I set about setting up a business model that I thought would survive. Now, it gave me stability, but I can tell now with the benefit of hindsight that what I did do inadvertently is I probably eliminated the highest of highs in making sure I didn't have the lowest of lows. So I kind of described it as walking in the middle of the street. I sort of set myself up so I couldn't fail or wouldn't fail, or the likelihood was low, but I shortchanged myself to a degree. And what ended up happening was once the doors were open and I went through that initial stage that everyone who opens up a bar or restaurant has every person they've ever met say, it's fantastic, I can't wait to be there, it's going to be my local. And after about 3 months or 6 months, when people realise that it's not a business that can afford to be giving away everything to every person that walks through the door, people just go about their daily lives again. And I was left with the conundrum, which was, how do I now make people interested in my business? Because hospitality, it's an acute example of it, but again, I think it applies to a lot of businesses. I use an analogy which is opening to big box office. If you don't open to strong box office now, if you don't open to a crowd, you don't open to buzz in hospitality, the likelihood of you seeing out that first 18 months is incredibly low. And that process has been accelerated in the time that I've been involved in the hospitality industry. And it was something that surprised me even 7 years ago. I'm aware now that if I did it tomorrow, I'd have an even shorter life cycle if I didn't get the things that I needed to get right at the outset.
Opening to the big box office, that kind of makes sense, I suppose. Big crowd, pent-up demand. Here we go, it's opening soon. But hospitality, it's a little bit like fashion in that it comes in and out of trend. So what was your trick to then maintaining that excitement?
The trick for me ultimately was social, was Twitter, was the foundation upon which the business was built.
Steve, tell me, are we going to have a Twitter conversation? Because, mate, I've been looking for someone who's mastered Twitter in their business.
Yeah, mate, I can vouch for it. It's a thing. Yeah, absolutely. It has been foundational. I've tweeted 28,000 times if you look at my Twitter account. It's been my tweet every single time. I did a presentation recently to a group of hospitality owners, and I said I can ascribe a value to each tweet.
No.
I could notionally say that I think between $30 and $40 a tweet is what those tweets have generated.
How do you do that?
Because I can put a direct line through functions, events, referrals and income that I would otherwise not have had access to except for Twitter.
Goodness me. Hey, before I get Steve to spill the beans on how he uses Twitter successfully, here's a brief word from our lovely sponsor. Support for this show comes from Key Person of Influence, a structured business accelerator program for those keen to be an industry thought leader. Recently, I asked co-founder Glenn Carlson what led him to starting KPI.
78% of Australian businesses have less than 4 employees and they're in the service space. So doctors, lawyers, financial planners, personal trainers, physiotherapists. And there was nothing really structured to look after those people and help them accelerate through their entrepreneurial journey. And we have a very strong and have always had a very strong affinity with those sorts of business owners because we are those sorts of business owners. And that's what the Key Person of Influence program is designed to help people do.
Key Person of Influence, taking you from good to seriously great. For a free hard copy of their Amazon bestseller, visit keypersonofinfluence.com/Timbo. Righto. So, at what point? Let's explore the Twitter strategy for Honey Bar. At what point did you go? Oh, hang on, this Twitter thing looks like it could work.
I jumped on I think it was 2009 that I started tweeting, and it was something that it was something I had a little bit of an affinity for because by nature, outside the hospitality bit, I'm a late night person, so I like to keep myself amused in the hours that most people are switching off, and Twitter gave me an opportunity to reach out to people and have conversations. And I realised very early on, people just want to know you care, and if you do care, it's an easy thing to sustain. So I relatively diligently tweeted, and I tweeted night after night, and I tweeted day after day, and people became familiar with me and the voice of the business. And most importantly, Tim, it's just 101. I just wasn't selling the bar. Like, I wasn't saying to people, come to my bar. My bar is interesting. The most interesting thing in the world to most people is themselves. So I took the time to find out a lot about the people who were talking to me and the people that were sort of talking around the business.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm looking at your Twitter feed now. Are you still doing it?
I am.
Goodness me, mate. And you've got 5,000 followers, and I always, like you go, is that a big number, a small number? Who knows? Local bar seems like a good number of followers. 28,500 tweets. Imagine how many hours that'd be, mate, that you could have kind of, dedicated to driving a taxi, maybe an Uber these days. So, and it's just conversational. There's no, buy from me. It's just conversational. Have you got like a particular strategy for writing your tweets?
No, as much as you can. On Twitter, it's easy. If you're amusing to the people you're talking to, you resonate with them. And again, though, the interest in what people are doing, and I often use the analogy with people again, you talk about what did you have for breakfast, and people say, I don't care what you had for breakfast. Why do I care? Twitter's a waste of time. What you had for breakfast is important to me when I'm listening because it's informative. I know that if you had a late breakfast, it might be because of a late night, and I know if you had a late night, it might be because you had a celebration. You're celebrating your new job because you hated your old job. Now, if I have that timeline, all those things are relevant bits of the story for me. Mm-hmm. So it allows you to really have proper conversations, deep conversation, connected conversation with people when you are paying attention to their lives. And if you drop in and out of the conversation, it's very difficult to pick that stuff up. But I can talk to you about all sorts of issues, positive and negative, that so many of the people who follow the Twitter account have. And it's just because I've been paying attention over an extended period of time. And that's when people say, it's hard to make the time, I don't have the time. The truth is, for me, if I phrase it in the terms of $30 or $40 per tweet, ultimately, now clearly I didn't know that when I started, But if I can reflect and do that, then you say, well, it has been worth the time, because that's hundreds of thousands of dollars that can be attributed to taking an interest in other people's lives.
And I think too, Steve, like that business about time, it's really, people overestimate how much time a lot of this marketing is going to take, and it doesn't necessarily need to be hours. It might take you 2 or 3 hours to get up to speed, let's say, on Twitter, to get your head around it, how it works, how to populate your profile, do all that kind of stuff. But geez, you can do a tweet between here and the bathroom, or maybe in the bathroom.
That's what I always say to people, Tim. It's a gap filler. Whilst you're starting, do it in the car when you're sitting next to your wife or your spouse or whoever it is. Do it when you're sitting on the couch and it's a commercial break. It doesn't stop productive time. Just make an assessment of what time is neither here nor there, and that's when you start playing. And if you see value in it, for me now, I can't spend enough time on social. The social stuff in general has morphed into a new business for me, 2 new businesses for me, because I've taken such an interest over an extended period of time and built a knowledge base. And I'm always mindful of the fact that skill sets for most people tend to fatigue. So I'm always thinking, what am I doing 5 years from now for as a business? Because I know that I don't want to be the old fella, the cute novelty that is the old fella standing behind the bar, which I really do anyway, but I don't want to be that guy, because I don't think that's where I want to be professionally or personally 5 years from now. So the conversations that I'm picking up on and the things that I'm learning allow me to say, great, here's a skill set. How can I develop it? And what opportunities does this potentially open for me?
Steve, I just want to go back to Honey Bar briefly, because you got it open. It's going along beautifully. You're using Twitter. What else did you do to get the word out around Honey Bar? Because I had a guest on a few weeks ago. He stopped children from coming. That's how he owned a cafe up outside of Cairns, and he said, "Okay, no more kids." Got a huge amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars of publicity. What have you done?
Well, I started off with the Twitter stuff, and foundationally, I sort of reinforced those online relationships in the premises. So when I could entice people in, and when people did come through the door, I tried to make sure that the experience they had online was the experience they had offline as well. And what ended up happening was people started sort of propagating that message for me. So I found I had advocates for the business, some of whom had never been in the place, Tim. That's the thing that people don't get as well. Some of the strongest advocates for my business have barely stepped foot in the place, but they have a sense of what we try to do and how we try to help connections within the business, and they themselves then feel like they're part of this broader community. So I turned the online conversation into the offline conversation, and then when people met me and they met people within the business, they found that they were provided opportunities they might themselves not have had. So a lot of business connections are made there. It's not a very sexy part of the industry, and this is where, again, I'm a little bit atypical. Most people do the Friday, Saturday night thing. That's what the focus of the hospitality business is. Whereas we host hundreds of events a year where they're networking events, where they're events where people are being connected to like-minded business people, and it just ends up being the bread and butter of the business that's a little bit below the line because, as I said, it's not the sexy bit. What ended up happening over a period of time, Twitter became and has become much noisier than it was. So I started shifting attention to Facebook, and I spent more time having conversations and doing a variety of promotional things on Facebook. And ultimately, when Facebook changed what they were doing for business, I started to learn the tools behind Facebook, and I started using advertising and the channels that they were providing to drive people through as well. So it's kind of trying to pay attention to where the technology is going to best magnify the message of the business.
And I think, I get that. And you're the kind of guy who's got your head around that. You enjoy it. I think there'd be business owners listening to this that go, that just sounds way too hard, which it may well. And it doesn't mean every business owner doesn't need to embrace social media to the level that you have. But what I would say is, like, just if you are going to explore social media, choose a channel that resonates with you, that you think your prospects are on, and really embrace that and have some fun with it and make time for it.
Yeah, I think it's really good advice.
Yeah.
The natural sort of learning of I have committed the time. I saw value in it, so I did it. It wasn't something I thought I'm doing it regardless of the impact it's having on the business. I wouldn't have the opportunity to spend as much time doing it if it wasn't generating the return. But the question I often ask of business owners is, what else are you doing? Because from a marketing point of view, print media is not generating the return it used to. Word of mouth that is general sort of buzziness and promoters and again doesn't do it. So where else are you getting bang for your buck, or where else are you able to do something that is still, ostensibly, Twitter is a perfect example, free, save for the time that you need to commit.
Yeah, well, and that's the amazing thing. And if you want to dumb it down, and I do like the mindset around each marketing channel, social media is really just people having conversations online. It's the best definition I've heard of it. The conversations differ depending on what channel you're on. I think Gary Vaynerchuk, social media guru, talks about, Twitter's a cocktail party, short, sharp bursts of conversation. Facebook's more of a party where people are kind of looking to see who's there, what they're wearing, who they're with.
Yeah.
LinkedIn's a networking event. So it's about choosing the right tone of voice and having some fun with it, I suppose.
It is. I think what you need to do is you need to connect the dots as well. I mean, as I said to you, I chatted to people on Twitter, and now between Twitter connections, Facebook connections, LinkedIn connections, if I introduce you to the people that are supportive of the business, I've travelled overseas with them, I've travelled interstate with them, I go to their birthday parties, I've hosted their weddings, I've been to their weddings, I've become a part of their life.
Mate, you are a man of the people. There is no doubt about it.
Mate, I like to get out there.
You are a man of the people.
And this is why when people do the usual sort of whack at social, which is, you've got to lift your head up from the computer screen and live a little. I'm living a little. I've met these people. It's the method by which I've been introduced to them.
Yeah.
The nature of the relationship and the way you sort of go once you've had that first conversation is entirely up to you.
Steve, what's the most unusual, funniest, memorable thing that's happened to you since owning the Honey Bar?
Oh, geez. Most unusual and the funniest. I think the unusual bit for me, and it's not so much unusual as it is really rewarding, is I've shared in some amazing moments with people who have come across the business. And that bit is the thing that sort of sticks with me. I wrote a few blog posts a while back about just a variety of the connections, but when you have taken part in people's lives where they've either met at the bar or they end up getting married at the bar because there's some other connection, they have the wedding there. That sort of participation for me is far and away the best outcome that I've produced. I've probably lost track. I could probably tell you the busiest night we've had in the 6 years, but I couldn't tell you what the 3rd and the 5th and the 10th busiest was. But those sorts of moments are the ones that I think over time, when I've moved on to other projects, they're the things I'll reflect upon and say they were the most amazing.
What was the busiest?
The busiest for us was New Year's Eve.
Yeah, right.
So, you get those things right and they generate enough to mean that the month of January is usually relatively relaxing, and then you go back to the real life in February.
So, mate, what now? You have started a social media business. Is that kind of the next big thing for you?
Yeah, they've got 2 things in play at the moment, and they're complementary to this thing. And I think this is where, again, when people take leaps from where they are, they're not leaps if you can connect the dots. 2 businesses, one called Chunky Media, which is a social selling business. It's saying to business owners, if you don't have the time to build a community now, the tools are such that you can spend relatively modest amounts of money in order to get sales, to get valuable sort of contributions and connections to your business. So that's something I'm pretty excited about, because what it's done is taken this layered knowledge and now I'm able to apply it primarily beyond hospitality. I don't do many of these things for hospitality people, Tim. They for good reason, have a healthy paranoia about the person who's operating across the road, because it's such a difficult business to be successful in. Everyone always thinks, I think the person across the road is trying to do them in. So generally I don't talk to hospitality people about hospitality. I talk to e-commerce businesses about transactional business before I talk about hospitality people about that. And then there's a function business I'm setting up. Again, having learnt that a lot of people will try to take a slice of a pie that they haven't necessarily earned. I'm setting up an online function business which allows me to facilitate functions and events across Australia for venues where I say I think I can create more value than it's going to cost you to participate in the business.
It's sort of an Airbnb for functions?
I never use the Airbnbs and the Ubers because that's everybody, but it is a broad network to be able to connect people with the right venues.
You a workaholic?
I don't know whether workaholic's the right word. I think I enjoy the things that I choose to do, and that's not all the time, of course. Business has its usual sort of pressures, but I'm making very conscious choices about my time, and for that reason I think I'm happy to do and happy to work what I characterise as unusual hours by most people's standards.
Are you a control freak?
Less so than I was. And I think there are certain things that I think the recognition of certain skill sets, I think it's silly to give away the control of things that you are clearly better than those that you employ to do. But having said that, I think I'm much more of an advocate for, if you can get to 70 or 80% of where you need to be, hand it off. I don't believe in perfectionism. I think the truth is, when most people say I'm a perfectionist, rarely are people perfect. So I think people kid themselves into thinking that they are perfectionists when the reality is they're spending too long trying to get everything right. You're better off stopping at some point in time. But again, that's part of a maturing for me as a business owner too in the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, not easy, but quite freeing when when you become kind of less dependent on yourself.
Yeah, and I think you've got to not be jaded. The reality, Tim, is a lot of people come in and out of most small business, and everyone comes in with good intentions. I said to someone the other day that it's probably the case that 10% of people leave very, very happy with the experience. 80% are neither here nor there. It was good while it lasted, it didn't last, and then 10% probably think you're the devil incarnate. I said that's 90% of people who probably leave your business without thinking this was the best experience it could have been, which is tough because going in, there's always an expectation from me that I do want to make it the best experience you're likely to have, or for that particular point in your life, the best experience you're going to have at that stage.
Mate, love your work, love your enthusiasm. All the best for the future. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, mate.
Did you enjoy that, team? Hope you did. Steve Vallas is his name. He is the owner of the Honey Bar, and you can find him on Twitter. Hit him up. He's there a lot. 28,500 tweets, a lot. At the Honey Bar is his Twitter ID. Tell him you heard him on the show. I think I might even organise a little bit of a meet-up at the Honey Bar before the year's out. I've put it out there now. Come on, forum members, help me there. We'll get it together. Be a good place to hang out. Hey, I want to share my top 3 learnings from that fireside chat with Steve. Thanks to the good folk at keypersonofinfluence.com/Timbo. There's one free book you should go and get by going to that link. It'll teach you how to be a KPI. And if you want another free book, go to audibletrial.com/SBBM. My top 3 learnings. Number 1, find your inner mongrel. Yeah, that's it. That's all you need to do. A little bit less Mr. Nice Guy or Mrs. Nice Guy, and just add a pinch of mongrel. Learning number 2, no matter what social media channel you use, just be conversational. Have a chin wag with your prospects, clients, customers. You know, two-way street. Don't sell them anything. Just develop a bit of trust, a bit of familiarity. Learning number 3, what's next? What's next for you? So Steve's been running the Honey Bar for a while. He's now moving on to other things that still utilise the skills that he's used in the Honey Bar with his social media business. So what's next for you? Have you thought about it? Maybe you should. Love to know what your learnings were. Head over to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com. Look out for episode 277 and drop me a like. Okay, time for a rant. I'm up on my soapbox. Hear me out here. I want to know, how do some businesses survive? Seriously, I have had 3 very disappointing experiences, customer experiences just this week with small businesses that could have been like so easily avoided. Can I share them with you while I'm up on my soapbox? One was with a cafe in Melbourne's second largest shopping centre. So the rents are expensive, right? They're paying top dollar to be there. I order, really simple order, egg and bacon roll, thanks, and a coffee. The special that you've got written on the blackboard. That was what I said. But the waitress couldn't understand my order. Then another waitress came along and she couldn't understand my order. Now, I know I've got a thick Aussie accent, but hey, I'm in Australia. Then the boss comes and the 2 waitresses stand and watch as the boss takes my order. So there were 3 people lined up, all kind of figuring out, what's this big 6'4" bloke ordering? What egg and bacon sandwich and a coffee? Shouldn't be that hard. Should not be that hard. It gets worse. Gets worse. Next one was a gym. I want to join my whole family. I want to get what am I saying? I want to get my family a gym membership. There's 5 of us. So I'll make an inquiry at the local gym. And the receptionist gives me the sales spiel so fast, she stops and apologises. She says, I've done this so often, I'm getting bored of it. What? Can't say that. So I kind of gave her a couple of tips to not get bored of it, because I've given a similar keynote a lot of times too. But you find new ways of delivering it, you know. So I move on, having got a price from her. Oh, by the way, no family discount. Like, what was that about? There's 5 of us. 200 metres down the road, they've got another outlet, same gym, another outlet, and they have got a banner out the front with a special on it that's different to the special that got mentioned to me previously. So I go in there and I talk to the receptionist, and she says, well, actually, all the salespeople are out to lunch. I'll get one of them to ring you. Cool. Here's my phone number. Look forward to the call. I look forward to signing my 5 family members up to your gym. Hey? Takes my number. Still waiting on the call. That was 6 days ago. What's going on there? Here's the big one. Number 3, car dealer. I bought my wife a new car this week. Brand spanker. I sought 2 quotes on the car and my trade-in, right? Went to 2 dealerships. Here's the car I'm trading in. That's the car I want to buy. Can you give me a price? One called back. Guess what? The other one hasn't yet. It's a week ago. I bought the car, not off the one who hasn't called back, one who did. Combined, we're talking about a cost of about $40,010.90 for all 3 of those businesses combined. In terms of money lost, business lost. Now, I don't share these stories to rain on small business. You know me better than that. I love small business. I share them so we can all be better business owners. I wonder what the owners would think of those 3 businesses if they heard those stories. Douglas Adams once said, I love deadlines. I love the whooshing sound they make as they fly by. Well, there you go. That was a big show, wasn't it? Plenty of bits and bobs in there for you to go off and action. Hey, I've also got plenty of marketing gold coming your way over the weeks ahead. Topics include pop-up stores, the joys of a family business, and I'm sure there's probably another funny business in there somewhere before the year's out with old Griffo. Hey, be sure to grab your free hard copy of the Key Person of Influence Amazon bestseller over at keypersonofinfluence.com/Timbo. And grab a free audio book as well over at audibletrial.com/SBBM. Why wouldn't you? Plenty of time to digest a good old book, I reckon. Audio production for this show is done by the great Daryl, a.k.a. Dazzleary Misson. Thanks, Daz. My music bed created by all-round good guy and musician Lockie Dolly. If you want to surround yourself with motivated business owners, then join the Small Business Big Marketing Forum. You'll love it. We talk marketing. We help each other grow our businesses through smart marketing, actually. Head over to crankmymarketing.com and you can sign up within, I'd say, less than a minute. If you need a speaker for an upcoming event, then I'm all yours. Check out timreid.com.au. That's REID. Until next week, that's me, Timbo Reid. May your marketing be the absolute best marketing. Bye for now.